Howdy friendos, my name is Stuart, and welcome to our December video explosion Okay, listen, I recorded this video back in like October, and I don't think I managed to come up with a name for this event yet, so today we'll be looking at Marvel's Blade, a Dhampir with all the classical strengths of a classic vampire, and none of the weaknesses except the thirst, which means something completely different in 2021 than it did in 1990. Created in 1973 by Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan. Gene Colan, that's his name. Blade in the comics was originally just a human who was immune to vampirism, and a side character at that. It's crazy to think how big of an impact Blade had on both comic book and vampire media as early as 1998. That's 2 years before Fox's X-Men movies began, and 1 year after people thought that the superhero genre died with Batman and Robin. Anyway, let's get into the character. Eric Brooks, aka Blade, was born in 1967. One day, his pregnant mother was bitten by a vampire named Deacon Frost. Eric was saved while his mother seemingly died, but was infected with vampirism that kicked in a little later in life. Blade was eventually found by the vampire hunter Whistler, who took in and trained Blade to be the ultimate suckhead slayer. Listen, I know it's the 90s, but I keep forgetting they call them suckheads. Like, it's in the movie. This guy says motherfucker like he's Sam Jackson, but he says suckhead completely unironically. Right, he's the Daywalker. Blade is a skilled, ruthless vampire hunter, and while he is hunting for the vampire that killed his mother, he is also eradicating any vampire that he comes across in general. Now, the Marvel vampires aren't a group to empathize with. They rule from the shadows, make deals with their human allies called familiars, and they are actively trying to spread their power and influence while they conquer the world. Think Harvey Weinstein combined with the Illuminati. Yeah, really. Blade, therefore, is upsetting that power with the intention of revenge and redemption. He's not very openly empathetic towards humans who are caught in the crossfire, and he's clearly enjoying the hunt. In fact, he's used humans as bait before. So with all of that, let's begin Blade at lawful neutral. Since he was raised by Whistler, he pretty much dedicates his life to slaying vampires with their code of ethics. He rarely goes out of his way to protect people, only really doing it if they're in a convenient place. In fact, as I mentioned before, he's used people as bait. Quick side note, we are not doing the TV show. It's just really, really not good. Anyway, with that all out of the way, let's go.
Prepare to be penetrated. A fitting end for one such as you.
You can't do this!
Why not? It's easy and fun. Oh, just gonna do. Gonna really mess you up. Dork, dork, dork.
It's not often we begin with a nat 20 tone setter. Blade slays an LA vampire rave club while looking for Quinn, a vampire working under Deacon Frost and whom Blade has hunted and beaten in the past. He pins Quinn to a wall and sets him ablaze. He does stop the human from trying to stop the flames and leaves him and Quinn's body to be discovered by the cops. Lawful neutral.
Paramedics said he was still screaming when they found him. Stapled to a wall.
Blade comes back to finish Quinn off at the hospital and get information on Frost. This does lead to several deaths, and Blade is distracted by guards, allowing Quinn to escape. Let's just call this lawful neutral as well. Finding a bitten Karen, Blade is about to leave her behind before remembering his own mother. He instead takes her with, albeit not telling her why, running from the security, fleeing fire, tossing Karen around like a rag doll, which injures her, and he relocates her shoulder after said tossing. Let's just go with chaotic good.
Whistler! Bringing home strays now.
Taking Karen to his mentor Whistler, Blade stays with her as she goes through the painful process of fighting the transformation. Neutral good.
Give him 50-50. Makes a good night.
Blade refuses Whisper's idea of bringing Karen into their operation to help with the now failing serum. After explaining who they are, Blade drops off Karen and insists she gets out of town to save herself. Neutral good.
Remember what we told you. You keep your eyes open. They're everywhere.
Blade lingers around nearby until familiars show up to finish Karen off. Granted, he didn't tell her that she might be attacked this quickly, and he was using her as bait. When Karen points this out, he tells her to
Get over it.
chaotic neutral.
The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping. There is another world beneath it. The real world. And if you want to survive it, you better learn to pull the trigger.
Blade savagely beats the familiar sent to kill Karen, both in the apartment and on the streets. He robs the familiar to help him fund his operations and get information on the blood bank. We see earlier he does this to help fund his operations. When the familiar runs, Blade attempts to kill him in broad daylight and berates Karen for stopping him. Because this is such a cruel thing that he's doing and he's kind of getting off on it, we're just going to call this chaotic evil, but if you want to say lawful evil, sure.
I have to stick with you. It's the only way that I'll stay alive long enough to find a cure for myself.
Staking out the familiar's car with Karen, Blade finds the blood bank and lets Karen come with him. He arms her with weapons and knowledge. Lawful good.
Safety's off, rounds already chambered. Silver hollow point filled with garlic. You ain't for the head or the heart. Anything else is your ass.
Blade works his way through the guards and attacks the familiar to gain access to the secret passage. After confirming its existence, Blade lets the familiar go to deliver a message to Frost. Lawful good.
You tell him it's open season on all suckheads.
Blade interrogates, and by that I mean tortures, a vampire called Pearl with UV lights. He then finds out about the prophecy Frost wishes to enact. Lawful evil. Lawful evil for torture, I should probably, specify. Quinn and the others ambush Blade with a child. He fights back, but allows himself to get injured to stall for time. Whistler comes by, saves him and Karen, and then they leave. Blade tells Karen he trusts Whistler enough to take care of himself before the three escape. Neutral.
You're one of them, aren't you?
No. I'm something else.
Blade allows Karen to help out in both the fight and eventually relocating his shoulder. He doesn't allow her to inject him with the serum, however. Let's just go with neutral. This is a good insight into Blade. Blade doesn't feel human, especially after killing the homeless people prior to Whistler. He does admit his motivation is to find the vampire who killed his mother, and turned him, and with every vampire he slays, he feels a piece of his soul healing.
Smelled like a vampire wiped his ass with it.
Blade manages to save the data he got for Whistler. Karen then makes a new weapon for Blade. Blade also reveals Whistler's cancer, and when Karen tries to approach him on his love for Whistler, Blade rebuffs it and keeps it cold. Lawful neutral, I guess. Blade and Frost meet face to face. Frost, holding a child captive, tries to propose a truce. Blade shuts it down and tries to bluff indifference towards the child. Frost then throws the girl into oncoming traffic, whom Blade eventually saves, but not before trying to shoot a fleeing Deacon. Neutral good.
Frost, you're nothing to me but another dead vampire.
Returning to a recently attacked base, Blade finds a tape and the covered body of an injured Whistler. Despite the futility, Blade tries to clean the wound and convinces himself he can save Whistler. Whistler demands Blade's gun and for Blade to walk away. Reluctantly, Blade does so. Lawful good.
The Blood God's coming, and after tonight, you people are fucking history. He's a hurricane. An act of God. Anyone caught in his path will instantly be turned.
Despite Whistler's warnings that Blade is the key to Frost's plans, Blade goes in to save Karen and get revenge on Frost. Blade wrecks shop and kills everyone in sight. Chaotic good. Blade sees his mother and freezes up. He is then jumped by Frost and captured. He begins craving to thirst, but also does try to trick Deacon into having his serum, Karen's new weapon. This doesn't work. Chaotic good.
If it works, you'll lose your strength and your ability to regenerate. You'll be completely human.
Dying of blood loss, Blade asks for the serum to stop Frost. Knowing she can cure herself, Karen offers her blood to heal and empower Blade. Blade refuses, but then eventually gets over it and agrees. Neutral good.
Woo! Superhero landing!
After drinking blood for the first time in years, Blade manages to keep his mind in check and slay his mother. He then proceeds to obliterate every single suckhead in his path in the beginning of several back-to-back Nat 20 moments in a movie already bursting with them. Nat 20 fight, neutral good.
Hey, Blade! Let's do this. Too late, Blade.
Blade fights and slays his mortal enemy, Frost. At first trying to kill him quickly, he then uses Karen's weapon to kill Deacon. He does not celebrate, he does not cry, and he leaves with Karen after killing the vampire he's hunted for so long. Lawful good, I guess.
You keep your cure. There's still a war going on, and I have a job to do.
Blade rejects the cure for vampirism. He opts to keep his superhuman strength to keep fighting vampires, only asking Karen for a better serum. I'm going to call this lawful good. Two years after the end of the first movie, Blade has continued his operations. He has a new helper, Scud, more on that later, and has been tracking Whistler, who survived and has turned into a vampire. We find out later that after killing Frost, Blade has moved on from trying to redeem himself and is now motivated by his hate of vampires, believing it's fate. Technically lawful good twice over the long period of time.
Take me to it, and I'll consider you a loose end.
During his hunt, Blade leaves one vampire alive and threatens him to give info on Whistler. He uses the vampire Rush as a meat shield when locating Whistler as well. In exchange, he lets Rush go with the warning of,
"Get you later."
lawful good. Technically. Finding Whistler, Blade goes against his plans to slay him and opts to try to cure him. As Scud points out, this attempt may kill Whistler. Blade stays firm, has a moment with Whistler, and waits. He does get ready to kill Whistler if he doesn't turn back into a human from the looks of it, though. Lawful good.
How do you feel? Like hammered shit.
When vampires come to Blade's HQ, Blade fights them to a draw. One of the messengers, Nisa, offers Blade a truce. Despite the obvious danger, Blade hears their warnings and goes with them, not without taking some precautionary Simtex. You know, as you do.
Unfortunately, viruses evolve too. We've encountered a new one. We dubbed it the Reaper strain.
Learning about the Ravagers and how they're hunting both vampires and eventually humans, Blade agrees to not only hunt the Reapers, but lead a team, the Blood Pack, that was designed to hunt and kill Blade. Blade knows the vampires will betray him at a moment's notice, but he recognizes how dangerous the Reapers are, and valuable the information and resources he'll get being this close to the vampires. Lawful good.
Hey, me and the gang were wondering.
What was that?
Can you blush?
Blade meets the Blood Pack. Reinhardt, Ron Perlman, tries to intimidate Blade, who goads the Blood Pack back. He then proceeds to taunt Reinhardt, let him attack Blade before Blade implants an explosive device to keep Reinhardt in check.
Now you got an explosive device stuck to the back of your hand.
Blade, and by extension his team, work with the Blood Pack. They arm themselves with their supplies. Blade then lets them in on hunting tactics and other stuff. He follows the vampires' lead and doesn't stop any feeding vampires, only hunting Reapers. He does have to remind Reinhardt of his place and is protective of Whistler while on the field. Lawful neutral.
No Mac. Dave Walker.
Blade finds Novak and the two fight. Upon finding out most vampires' weakness don't work on Reapers, he immediately accuses Nysa. I think her name is Nysa. It might be Nysa Nisa. I'm sorry, chat. I don't know. It might be one or the other. When discovering one of the Blood Pack has turned, Blade steps in and kills the infected, at the risk of harming the rest of the Blood Pack with sunlight as well. Lawful neutral.
Why is he dying? What's killing him?
Time.
After discovering the Reaper's nest and scoping out on his own, Blade makes the executive decision to hunt with the Blood Pack at day. He tells them all that not everyone will survive, but insists they protect themselves accordingly. He does have a private aside with Nysa, telling her to seek cover as well. Lawful good.
The only difference between us is that I made peace with what I am a long time ago.
While hunting and setting up UV bombs, Blaine discovers a group of Reapers are heading towards Nyssa. He breaks off and goes to rescue her and gives her enough time to escape the range of his own UV grenades. Chaotic good.
You obviously do not know who you are fucking with.
Realizing the blood pack has almost been wiped out, save for Nyssa and Reinhardt, Blade takes a bunch of Reaper pheromones to lure the baddies towards the UV bomb radius. Lawful good. Blade finds a badly wounded Nyssa after the bomb goes off. He willingly cuts himself to give her blood to heal. Neutral good. Blade is captured and finds out that the Reapers were created as the next evolution of vampires. Blade tries to blow up Reinhardt, only for Scud to reveal that he has become a familiar before the movie began, and he says he got rid of the bomb. Blade then goes, actually, and reveals he's known Scud was a familiar and he gave an actual bomb, blowing Scud up. Badly injured after the vampires try to harvest him to improve the Reapers, Blade willingly goes into the bloodbath to help empower himself against the vampires and a rampaging Novak. He then proceeds to wreck house. Neutral.
Can you blush?
After slaying Novak, Blade comforts a transforming Nyssa. He honors her wishes and takes her outside to die as a vampire and to see the sun. Neutral good.
Well, you didn't think I forgot about you, did you?
Dude, bro. You could have waited till he was done. Vampire or not, this is a massive bro code violation. Lawful evil, and yes, I'm absolutely serious. Blade has once again continued his vampire hunting operations with Whistler in between movies and has become way more public and reckless. This recklessness causes Blade to kill a familiar out in public. Chaotic good.
Set your sorry ass up.
The vampires then leak Blade's footage and identity to the populace with the FBI. Whistler is naturally worried, but Blade tries to be dismissive of the entire thing. However, the FBI, led thanks to the vampires, find and attack Whistler and Blade. Blade and Whistler defend themselves until Whistler sacrifices himself. Demoralized, Blade gives himself up to the FBI and is captured, something we'll see a lot in this movie. Neutral.
Say, how many people have you killed, Blade?
1,182. But they all familiars. People who work with them.
Feeling lost of Whistler's second death and the thirst, Blade barely puts up a fight with the FBI answering questions. Even before he's drugged, he finds out that his psychiatrist is a familiar. Blade barely resists. Neutral.
Evening, ladies.
Hannibal King and Hawkeye, aka Abigail Whistler, show up to help rescue Blade from the FBI, and the vampire is going to kill him. Blade does leave them to go get his gear without telling them, but escapes custody. Chaotic neutral.
Forgot my sword.
After meeting with the Night Stalkers, Blade berates their operation. This could be that he's feeling remorseful after losing Whistler a second time, and maybe even Nyssa from Blade 2, but he does push them away initially. He is equally dismissive when they bring up Dracula. Blade only joins when the Night Stalkers reveal Daystar, a virus that will target and eradicate vampires. Chaotic neutral.
Time for a little fresher. Weakest link. Vampire Training Command has always been there. Familiars.
Blade begins leading the Night Stalkers to hunt down Dracula. They proceed to attack several familiars until they find a lead on a psychiatrist, Vance, and kill the familiar that they were interrogating. Blade also leads Abigail and King to Vance and continue to beat up several others on the way up. Lawful neutral.
Careful, Daywalker. I've been told about you, your weakness for humans.
Blade and company meet Drake, who run away after initially holding King hostage. Blade doesn't take the shot and chases him into a repeat of his in-person encounter with Frost, with the child hostage to boot. The two talk about their goals and fighting each other. Blade does save the baby this time, as opposed to going for the shot like he did with Frost, so progress, I guess, lawful good.
Look at this. It's the future you want. What you think? They have a place for you in their future?
Blade and Abigail, with the help of the chief of police familiar, discover a blood farm made up of homeless people. Upon realizing this and that everyone is in a brain-dead coma, Blade shoots the chief after he lets them go and shuts down the plant. Chaotic good? Blade and Abigail return to find the base has been ransacked and King and Zoe, the kid, has been taken. Blade barely responds as Abigail finds the bodies of her comrades. Eventually, he tells her to let her anger out in a way that'll let her kill vampires. He checks in later to reiterate to not let her hate go inward. Let's call this chaotic good?
You need to know there's a chance the virus could destroy you too. Because you're a hybrid, I'm not sure if your immune system will be able to tolerate it.
Blade allows a copy of Daystar to be brought onto the field with the knowledge that it could kill him. He and Abigail gear up and go and destroy Jake, even trusting Abigail with Daystar. Lawful good.
Blade. Ready to die.
I was born ready, motherfucker.
Blade immediately goes to dispatch the goons and goes straight for Drake. Admittedly, he's also taking out all the vampires he comes across and even using smart tactics like pumping the vents with silver dust to weaken the vampires. He doesn't take care of everyone as he goes to fight Drake alone and leaves the rest for Daystar, Abigail, and King. After Abigail fails to shoot Drake with the Daystar, Blade takes the arrow and shoves it in, releasing the vampire cure. This causes him to also feel the effects of the cure. No matter what version of the movie you're watching, Blade either passes out for a long time before eventually hunting, or just gets up and goes off to hunt more vampires alone. Neutral good, I guess? So Blade was a lot harder for me to do than normal, mostly because Blade doesn't emote as much as other characters, and he does have a day job in vampire murder. Most heroes operate in fairly black and white motivations and goals, but Blade kills vampires because he was set out to do so by another, and he enjoys doing it. Sometimes the difference between his heroic actions and the actions for his job are only separated by a thin layer of humanity that can easily snap when Blade doesn't even have anyone to fight for. There are times, even now, when I look at an alignment ding and I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. You could hear me being really unsure this time because it's just hard to tell why he's doing what he's doing. Also, I stick by that lawful evil for killing the dude who was just kind of taking care of business, you know? A lot of people may come away from watching Blade movies thinking that our titular character doesn't go through much of any growth. At first glance, he's a 90s anti-hero lone wolf. Hell, the second and third movie could have been vehicles for the Blood Pack and then the Night Stalkers. Fun fact, there was actually the intention to spin off the Night Stalkers into their own thing at one point. It was really, really funny. Look up Blade Trinity Werewolf ending if you're curious. But watching this handy-dandy video, you can see that while not obvious, Blade actually does have a subtle character arc. We see him as a lone wolf willing to hunt and slay at all costs with little care about human life in the crossfire. And while he's still serious and badass, he does grow even after killing Frost. He starts letting his defenses down by the end of the trilogy, and it's a subtle hero's journey, but you could tell by movie 3 that he was much more willing to help innocent people. It also can't be stated enough that the world building in the Blade movies is just great. We get a lot of different cultures, ideas, and more out of all 3 movies. When Blade returns to the MCU, it'll definitely have some big shoes to fill, and he better have a crossover with Deadpool or I'm gonna fucking...
Language.